It didn't come from Paris. It didn't come from Washington. It came roaring into Ouagadougou under the scorching August sun. Steel beasts painted in desert camouflage, engines growling like thunder rolling through the red sail dust. Not second-hand pickups, not whispered promises of aid, but brand new Chinese war machines, unapologetically bold and terrifyingly modern. VN-22B autocannons capable of tracking fast-moving targets while firing on the move. PLL-05 gun mortars, a hybrid artillery that can rain down shells or engage head-on. SR-5 rocket systems, a 70-kilometer range, striking deep into enemy hideouts once thought untouchable. Burkina Faso, long forced to fight with scraps and prayers, now holds a battlefield arsenal designed not just to defend, but to deter and dominate. Why now? Why China? And what does it mean when a former French colony turns its back on the West and arms itself with Eastern fire? Because this was not just a delivery, it was a reckoning, a line drawn, a signal. Africa will no longer wait politely at someone else's table. But here's the real question: is this power broken bar or just a prettier chain? Stay with us. Subscribe, comment your truth, share this message, because this moment is not just about Burkina Faso. It's about every African nation tired of asking. Now, we choose. They didn't leave all at once. They faded a step by step, promise by broken promise. First came the delays, then the silence. For years, Burkina Faso stood as a loyal outpost of Western power in the Sahel. France, with its colonial legacy, had called itself the Shield. America, with satellites and signatures, followed behind. Both pledged protection. Both built their presence not just with soldiers, but with speeches, declarations of partnership, of progress, of shared security. But when the insurgents came, brutal, fast, relentless, that partnership proved paper thin. Between 2015 and 2024, Burkina Faso became a war zone. Village turned to ash, roads turned to traps. Over 2 million citizens, farmers, teachers, children, displaced. And as the country bled, what did the West deliver? Meetings, lectures, restrictions, not weapons, not reinforcements, not hope. And while officials in Washington debated governance benchmarks, entire communities were disappearing into fire. So when the people flooded Ouagadougou's streets in 2022, waving Burkina Faso diaresis and Russian flags, burning the tricolor of France, they weren't demanding revolution, they were demanding respect. They were demanding answers for a decade of abandonment. Out of that fire walked the soldier, Captain Ibrahim, young, unyielding, a man who did not come from elite academies, but from the very front lines the West ignored. This is the Captain Ibrahim latest news. He refused to beg. He refused to wait. While Paris packed its bags and Washington wavered, Ibrahim the copyright turned east. He opened the door to a different power, and Beijing walked through it. And not slowly, not quietly, but with engines roaring. August 2025, the convoys arrived, Chinese armored vehicles, fresh from the factory, rolling through the dust like thunder. VN-22B autocannons that fire while moving. PLL-05 mortars that strike near and far. SR-5 rocket systems that reach 70 kilometers deep into insurgent-held territory. For a country that had been relying on second-hand pickups and aging Soviet scraps, this was not a shipment, that was a statement. A nation written off by the world was writing itself back into history, and not with ink, with steel. This wasn't symbolic, this was strategic. For the first time in years, Burkina Faso had weapons that changed the game, not rusted trucks or mismatched rifles, but a modern arsenal designed to fight, to survive, to win. No more asking, no more waiting. The Burkina Faso latest news is not about charity. It's about choices. It's about refusing to wait for Western approval while the country burned. And still, beneath the steel and the strategy, there lingers the pain. The bitter truth that the guardians of democracy turned away when they were needed most. That for all the conferences and consultants, Africa was left to bleed again. This is why the Chinese tanks matter, not just for their firepower, but for what they represent. An end to begging, a start to bargaining, a new chapter not dictated, but decided. And make no mistake, this choice was not without risk. Critics warned of dependency, of Beijing's long shadow, of sovereignty sold in silence, but for the soldiers buried too young, for the mothers who heard silence when they screamed for help, this was no longer about perfect options. It was about survival. Now, here's what we ask you. Is this Africa finally choosing its future or just trading one master for another? Drop your truth in the comments. And if you believe Africa must choose its own path, say amen below. Subscribe, share, stay awake, because what's coming next isn't charity, it's history. And this time, Africa is writing it. They came not in shadows, but in sunlight. No longer hidden crates smuggled in at night. No longer whispers about foreign support. In August 2025, the Chinese convoys rolled through Ouagadougou like a parade day, not of celebration, but of intent. And the message was clear: Burkina Faso would no longer fight with scraps. Lined up on sun-scorched tarmac were the VN-22B fire support vehicles, standing like sentinels of a new era. 6 wheels, desert combo, armored plating thick enough to deflect armor-piercing rounds. Atop them, a 30mm auto-cannon mounted on a fully stabilized turret capable of tracking and eliminating targets while moving at speed. In a country where ambushes happen on dirt roads, and where survival often depends on seconds, this is no luxury. It is life or death. Burkina Faso's soldiers, once forced to ride in open pickups, now sit inside steel guardians. And they don't just ride, they strike. But the firepower didn't end there. Beside the VN-22BS stood the PLL-05 gun mortars, a strange hybrid beasts combining indirect and direct fire. Mounted on armored chassis, these systems can rain down shells from afar and pivot instantly to engage enemies face to face. In the forests of the east, where insurgents vanish behind mud walls and tree lines, this is game-changing. For years, artillery crews in Burkina Faso were exposed to operating mortars from dugouts with little mobility. Now, commanders can hit fast, move faster, and stay protected. Then came the SR-5S. If the autocannons and mortars were impressive, these rocket systems were something else entirely. Sleek, modular, terrifying. Each vehicle equipped with pods that can fire guided or unguided rockets over 70 kilometers. Targets once considered unreachable: insurgent camps, ammo depots, cross-border escape routes now lie within strike range. And not just strike, a precision strike. Rockets don't just kill, they announce, they alter terrain, behavior, fear. They remind the enemy, distance is no longer safety. For Burkina Faso, this was not just an upgrade, it was a transformation. The country has long been mocked for its outdated army, old rifles, borrowed APCs, minimal air support. But in a matter of weeks, the battlefield math changed. The soldier on the ground now has more than courage. He has reach, he has range, he has revenge within grasp. But let's not be fooled that this wasn't just about steel. It was about psychology. Because for too long, the Burkina Faso army fought knowing they were outgunned. That knowledge eroded morale, discipline, unity. And when you send a man into battle with nothing but a rusty rifle against rocket launchers, you are not giving him orders, you are giving him to death. Now that same soldier stands beside the VN-22B, with night vision, targeting systems, and a turret that follows his command. He believes again. And when an army believes, it doesn't just fight, it advances. That's the Captain Ibrahim latest news they don't broadcast in Western media. Belief is back, confidence is back, power of the kind that shows itself not in slogans, but in steel is back. And so is danger. Because weapons, no matter how advanced, don't win wars alone. They demand logistics, training, maintenance, discipline, and all of that takes time. The fear now is this: that these tools become trophies, parked, polished, but never mastered. But if China is serious, and it appears it is, then this delivery came with more than hardware. It came with advisors, manuals, and the quiet promise of continuity. For the first time, Burkina Faso's army may not just be equipped, it may be ready. And that readiness sends ripples to militants, who must now rethink their sanctuaries, to neighbors, who must reassess their alliances, and to citizens, who are watching hoping that these machines bring not just defense, but direction. What do you think? Are these weapons the dawn of a new army or just glitter covering an old wound? Comment below. And if you believe Africa deserves the best to defend its people, say it now. Say amen. Subscribe, share, stay with us, because power has arrived, and it's no longer borrowed. Before the convoys, before the rockets, before the autocannons, there was only dust, rust, and grief. From 2015 to 2024, Burkina Faso wasn't just losing ground that was being erased, not in headlines, not in speeches, but in fire. Whole regions slipped away like sand through trembling hands. The north and east became killing fields. Motorbike militias arrived like phantoms, they fast, ruthless, vanishing into forests before anyone could react. They didn't just kill, they dismantled. Schools, clinics, police stations, all collapsed under the sound of gunfire and silence. Villages emptied overnight. Families disappeared into the bush with only what they could carry. By 2024, over 2 million Burkina were displaced. That's not a number, that's a wound. And every wound had a name. Yet, through all this, the army stood, not because it was strong, but because it had no choice. With pickup trucks for armored transport, with second-hand Soviet rifles, with mortars so old they misfired more than they hit. Still, they fought. Still, they buried their brothers and returned to patrol. But bravery cannot outpace bullets, and hope cannot outrun RPGs. Every time the army tried to regroup, insurgents changed tactics. Every time they adapted, the battlefield shifted. It became a war of ghosts, a war the state was always a step behind in. That's why the August 2025 delivery hit different. It wasn't just equipment, it was breath. After drowning for 10 years, when the VN-22B rolled in, it wasn't about pride, it was about survival. A response vehicle that can fight on the move, that can take a hit and strike back, is not an upgrade. It's a lifeline. Before this, ambushes on supply convoys meant death. Now, soldiers have a fighting chance. They can push forward without being slaughtered on the roadside. They can shoot back, not just pray. The PLL-05 changed another story. Insurgents loved hiding behind trees, inside compounds, blending with civilians. Regular mortars couldn't reach them. Crews were exposed. Attacks had to be delayed or aborted. But now, with hybrid mortars that double as direct fire weapons, commanders can act fast, strike harder, and stay alive. It's not just about hitting harder, it's about controlling time. The battlefield now dances to their tempo, not the other way around. And then add the SR-5S. Those rocket launchers turned the war of frustration into a war of reach. For a decade, insurgents built camps deep in ungoverned zones. The army couldn't touch them. Now, 70 kilometers of fire says otherwise. Remote bases, supply chains, safe havens gone, not in theory, in real explosions. Burkina Faso latest news isn't about politics, it's about possibility. The army has tools it never imagined. But more than that, it has belief. And belief changes everything. Before, morale was paper thin. Soldiers went out not knowing if they'd return. They knew they were outgunned. They knew they were sacrificial. And still, they went. That eats a man from the inside. But now, when a soldier steps into a VN-22B, when he sees a rocket system armed and ready, he doesn't feel abandoned. He feels armed. He feels seen. That matters, because this war was never just about territory. It was about spirit. And for the first time in a decade, the Burkina Faso's spirit isn't just surviving, it's rising. But weapons alone do not end wars. They buy time. They shift momentum. They give space to breathe. What the army does with that space, that will define the next chapter. Do you think these systems are enough? Is this the moment the war begins to turn? Let us know in the comments. And if you feel the Burkina Faso's people deserve this chance, type Africa rise below. Subscribe. Stay here. The next chapter is unfolding, and it's one we were never meant to witness. It didn't happen in one night. It happened in 1,000 silent betrayals. For decades, Burkina Faso walked the tightrope, hands outstretched toward the west, hoping for safety in return. France, the old colonial father, had always promised protection. The United States, draped in the language of democracy, promised partnership. But when the fires came, when insurgents stormed the villages and bullets rained on schools, those promises turned to echoes, empty, cold, late. In the minds of many Burkina Faso diaresis, that wasn't just failure, it was betrayal. And so, the people rose. Ouagadougou, 2022. Tens of thousands took the streets. They didn't want charity, they wanted dignity. And dignity meant an end to foreign dictates. French flags burned under the same sun that once watched over colonial parades. The message was brutal, but clear. We no longer trust you. Paris responded with silence, then withdrawal. American support, once cautious, became conditional. More rules, more red tape, aid that arrived months too late, weapons that came with strings, reforms, audits, political alignments. How do you talk about transparency when your nation is on fire? How do you explain paperwork to a mother burying her child? That's when Beijing stepped in, not with lectures, not with speeches, with steel, with speed, with terms designed not to humiliate, but to secure. No demands for elections, no finger-pointing about governance, just convoys of armored vehicles and the training to use them. To some, this raised alarms, but to Captain Ibrahim Traoré, copyright the man now reshaping Burkina Faso's military doctrine, and was logic. And that's the Captain Ibrahim latest news the world can't ignore. He isn't playing for applause, he's playing for survival. The West framed its aid with conditions. China framed its deals with urgency. The difference? One gave speeches, the other gave rockets. But beyond the weapons lies the deeper truth. This pivot was about sovereignty. For too long, Africa has been asked to prove itself to its colonizers, to beg for legitimacy, to accept that foreign powers knew best. Traoré copyright flipped that script. He didn't beg, he negotiated, and in doing so, he redefined what partnership looks like. The visibility of the August 2025 shipment was no accident, it was theater. The kind designed not just to impress but to warn, to France, to the US, to insurgents watching from the hills. These aren't second-hand rifles dropped quietly at night. These are convoys, paraded under the sun, announcing a new alliance with the volume turned all the way up. But let's not romanticize. With every new partner comes risk. China's interest is not selfless. Its arms deals open doors to supply chains, to contracts, to influence. And dependency can shift from Paris to Beijing. Yet, to many in Ouagadougou, that's not the point. The point is choice. Finally, for the first time, Burkina Faso isn't waiting for a Western report to validate its pain. It's acting, fast, bold, on its own terms. Now, other nations watch. Mali with Russia, Niger with Turkey. A new bloc is forming, not anti-Western, just post-Western. One that says, we are done being experiments in someone else's strategy. Do you agree? Is this what sovereignty looks like, or are we just trading one leash for another? Comment below. And if you believe in Africa's right to choose, type Africa can do it. Down there, subscribe, stay, witness, because this isn't just a pivot, it's a declaration. A convoy of armored vehicles rumbling across Sahel dust is a powerful image, but behind that still lies a more delicate truth. Someone has to pay for it, and Burkina Faso, ranked among the poorest nations on earth, isn't flush with cash. So how did these weapons arrive so quickly, in such volume, with such sophistication? The answer, like all things in geopolitics, lies in the fine print. China didn't just deliver weapons, it delivered a new financing model, one that sidesteps the harsh terms of the West. One built not on cash, but on confidence, collateral, and calculated long-term bets. And the main bet? Gold. Burkina Faso is one of Africa's top gold producers. While its people live on less than $2 a day, its soil glitters with wealth. China knows this, and so do the men in Ouagadougou. The most likely structure behind this arms deal? A pledge of future gold exports, not outright sales, but security. In effect, the weapons rolling in today are being paid for with tomorrow's minerals. This is how Beijing operates across Africa. Angola, Dr. Congo, Sudan, roads, rails, and rifles, traded for oil, copper, or cobalt. It's not aid, it's leverage. But it's also opportunity. For countries long excluded from Western credit systems, it's a way in. Burkina Faso may have secured the weapons through a blend of deferred payments, concession loans, and barter-style arrangements. The terms: low interest, long timelines, few penalties, but high stakes. Because once you're inside China's defense ecosystem, switching out becomes nearly impossible. Spare parts, training, ammunition, all must come from Beijing, and that dependence is not just logistical, it's strategic. That's the Burkina Faso latest news. If you want to confront, behind the empowerment lies entanglement. The army may now be stronger, but is the state freer? Critics say number. They warn this is just a new master in a different uniform. That while the West demanded reforms, China demands silence. No scrutiny, no transparency. Just contracts, just commitments. Supporters argue otherwise. They say this is exactly what African nations need: options. For too long, they were told there was only one path to development, one partner worth trusting. Now, they negotiate. Now, they choose. The copyright as government appears aware of this balance. While embracing China, it's also talking to Turkey, Egypt, even launching local arms production. Diversifying not just weapons, but influence. Still, the core question remains: can a nation fight for sovereignty while pledging its resources to foreign powers? Can it win the war without losing the future? These are not easy questions, but they are urgent ones. Because while the new rocket systems may silence a battlefield today, the repayment clock ticks tomorrow. What's your take? Are these deals a bold path forward or a silent trap? Comment below. And if you believe African power must come with African ownership, type New Africa now. Subscribe. Don't look away, because in these contracts lie the blueprints of a new continent. What we witnessed in August 2025 wasn't just a military delivery, it was a declaration that Burkina Faso will no longer wait, beg, or plead for its survival. That Captain Ibrahim's latest news isn't about politics, it's about purpose. Once dismissed, underestimated, isolated, this nation now reclaims its narrative. With every rocket system, every auto cannon, every training drill, it sends a message: we will not go quietly. But beyond the guns and the gold lies a deeper truth: sovereignty is not a destination, it is a fight, one that never ends. And though China's partnership brings power, it also demands vigilance, because history has taught us, influence always comes with a price. Yet today, hope rises, not because Africa is free from threat, but because it dares to choose, to stand, to shape its future not in the shadows of old empires, but in the bold light of self-determination. This is your moment to speak. If you believe the Sahel is waking up, if you believe the ancestors dreamed of this day, type Africa new below, and let the world know, we are watching, we are remembering, and we will never again be silenced. Subscribe, like, share, because Captain Ibrahim's latest news is not the end of the story, it is the beginning of Africa's voice. Thank you for being here. We'll see you in the next story, the kind they still don't want you to hear.